people sharing their views on this nomination. And most of the time it's clear. Mr. Blanche has become a referendum on how people feel about President Trump. If you don't like the president, you don't like Mr. Blanche. If you do like the president, you do. I have not approached it that way. This process should be about Mr. Blanche and how he will go forward in a difficult job and how the American people can be best served. I have a history with Mr. Trump, but that history does not matter one bit. On the one hand, Mr. Blanche does not need to be Senate confirmed. He can continue to serve at the pleasure of the President as Deputy Attorney General or even Acting Attorney General if this vote is pulled. On the other hand, I am told that Senate confirmation is important in interactions with the President, with others in the Cabinet, and is important to DOJ employees in general. Being Senate confirmed gives him greater leverage to push for things that should be pushed for. This does not demean the Senate's role. Important issues have been discussed through this process, and Mr. Blanche has made commitments. Now on to the specific nomination. Since Mr. Blanche passed out of Judiciary Committee on August the 4th, I've spoken to Mr. Blanche 5 or 6 times. We have texted many more. I just got off the phone with him. I've spoken multiple times to Senators Murkowski, Cornyn, and Tillis. Senator Whitehouse shared his concerns. Additionally, I spoke with current and past administration officials, including a long conversation with former Attorney General Bill Barr. Late last night, I spoke to 2 U.S. attorneys from Louisiana, David Corsell and Kurt Wall. Of course, there's been a lot to read and a lot to consider, and I slept on it overnight. Let's start with the concerns. Mr. Blanche showed poor judgment in approving the anti-weaponization slush fund and exempting the president from IRS audits. No American should be unfairly targeted by the law, but no American should be above the law. Mr. Blanche said these were mistakes, and he has made efforts to kill the slush fund. I am particularly concerned about episodes of apparent lawfare. DOJ bringing suits against political enemies. Both parties, presidents of both parties, have been guilty of this. It must stop. It should stop now. A never-ending cycle of prosecuting political enemies undermines the rule of law, degrades the public's trust in our institutions, and makes our politics more extreme when we need to unite to solve the big problems of our time. I'm not entirely satisfied where this is, and I have no doubts that I'll have concern in the future. I will note that I've learned that some of the cases that have been publicly reported to be under investigation by the Department of Justice have been dismissed or are no longer being pursued. I am realistic that President Trump can be unrelenting on this, but this will be true no matter who the Attorney General is, and this is the rationale for having a Senate-confirmed Attorney General with more leverage to push back. I will also note that Mr. Blanche is criticized for things over which he has no control. He points out that he has been criticized for presidential pardons given to January 6 rioters, some of whom assaulted police officers. Many of us were here then. But this is a presidential prerogative, and he is not the president. He also points out that he can advise the president, but the president is not obligated to take his advice. That is the same thing that former Attorney General Barr said in a separate conversation. And Mr. President, I can absolutely believe that President Trump at times would not take advice. But even critics admit that Mr. Blanche knows the law and is a hands-on administrator. He has instructed U.S. attorneys to focus on violent crime, human and drug trafficking, and fraud in programs like Medicare and Medicaid. Mr. Corsell, the U.S. Attorney in New Orleans, says that when he needed extra resources, Acting Attorney General Blanche provided them to finish a big drug case. Both Mr. Corsell and Mr. Wall said that DOJ has accountability measures for each prosecutor in their office, and that there are weekly calls between their offices and DOJ to review the performance of each prosecutor. That morale was high, not despite the accountability measures, but because of the accountability measures. More cases were being processed and convictions being obtained. David Corsell spoke of almost $1 billion in fraud being recovered for the U.S. taxpayer from health care fraud. Both men said that having a permanent Senate-confirmed Attorney General was important. I cannot overstate Mr. Wall's and Mr. Corsell's support for Mr. Blanche. When former Attorney General Bill Barr endorsed Mr. Blanche, he said Mr. Blanche will run the department as effectively as anyone can under President Trump. Some have called that faint praise. I don't think that it is. I think it is a reality. Barr specifically addressed the allegation that Mr. Blanche would be a yes man for the president. He said that any attorney to represent a client well has to have tough conversations and confront a client with difficult truths. that because of his previous attorney-client relationship with President Trump, Mr. Blanche would be precisely the person to push back on President Trump. But that ultimately, and here Barr echoed what I heard from Blanche, decisions are made by the president. Mr. Blanche is not perfect, and he will tell you this, but the choice is not between perfection and Mr. Blanche. It is between Mr. Blanche and another acting attorney general who may not run the department effectively under President Trump and who indeed may not be as good as Mr. Blanche. This puts at risk the progress made fighting violent crime, human and drug trafficking, and fraud. And this does not serve the American people well. This is not a referendum on President Trump. It is a decision regarding Mr. Blanche in very specific circumstances. All considered, I will vote for Mr. Blanche. I'll be criticized for this vote. What's new? But the people of Louisiana can be assured that I worked hard to understand the issue and to make the right decision. With that, I yield.
President.
An emotional Senator Bill Cassidy there at the end, seeming to tear up at the very end of his remarks, where he did, in fact, announce that he will vote in favor to confirm Todd Blanche as Attorney General. Let's bring in Michael Schnell, our Capitol Hill reporter, who has been outside Senator Cassidy's office. Michael, your reaction to this news?
Yeah, I mean, Ariel, this is big news. As we've been talking about for the past hour, Bill Cassidy was the deciding vote under these circumstances on Todd Blanche's nomination to become the permanent attorney general. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski were already a no. Mitch McConnell is absent right now as he continues to recover from that fall in June, which meant it all fell on Bill Cassidy's shoulders. If he voted no under those circumstances, Blanche would fail. If he voted yes, Blanche would go through. And now we have that answer after days of asking Ariel that Bill Cassidy will vote for Todd Blanche to become the permanent attorney general. Bill Cassidy laid it out in that floor speech. I found it interesting that he pointed out that there are some flaws with Todd Blanche's nomination. He didn't think it was wise that he approved that anti-weaponization fund and the IRS immunity audit. He also voiced concerns about Todd Blanche's ability to serve as an independent attorney general. But that all being said, Bill Cassidy also walked through the reasons why and how he ultimately came to this decision. He spoke to Cassidy a number of times. He spoke with Tillis, John Cornyn, the two folks who struck that deal with Todd Blanche about the fund, about the IRS immunity. He also said he spoke with former Attorney General Bill Barr, who is supporting Todd Blanche for this role, in addition to two U.S. attorneys back in Louisiana. And essentially, in this speech, he came to the conclusion that in his eyes, it is important to have a Senate-confirmed attorney general for various reasons and various things that the administration and the job needs to get done, and that it was not a referendum on President Trump. He said that twice, that his past issues with President Trump have been well documented. Of course, Bill Cassidy was one of the folks who voted in favor of removing President Trump following his impeachment after the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol. And of course, then President Trump endorsed Bill Cassidy's primary challenger, which led to his ousting and put a bookend on his career up here on Capitol Hill. But again, he said that this is not a referendum on President Trump. This comes down to who should be serving as Attorney General and should it be a Senate-confirmed position, because if Todd Blanche were not confirmed today, he could still serve in the acting role for hundreds of days. And for all of those considerations, Bill Cassidy said that he will indeed support Todd Blanche to become the permanent Attorney General.
Michael Schnell, thank you so much for recapping that. Very quick around the horn here, David. A very emotional Bill Cassidy.
Very emotional, but the bottom line is this is a referendum on Donald Trump's second term, which has unprecedented corruption, unprecedented seizures of power by the president, and the only president in American history who will not accept the fact that he lost the 2020 election. I think this vote puts our midterm elections in danger and our democracy in danger.
If I heard Senator Cassidy correctly, he said that the president will now be in charge of the Justice Department and not the other way around, and it will not be independent. And that's what it seemed to me to be the takeaway from that conversation.
He framed it as the best worst option. That's really what he said. And something that stood out to me that he said he will push for things that should be pushed for. I really want to know what those are in Bill Cassidy's book.
Okay, real quick.
It's the emotion. I mean, the Republican Party is a hard place for Bill Cassidy to be in. And I feel like when you saw how he ended that speech, that's sort of what I felt.